Finally on the east coast of Australia at Eden in New South Wales. I've been here since night before last, and I'm trying to get some energy back. Left Lakes Entrance at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, and caught the slack tide. Pretty easy going out. It was very overcast and rainy, but once I got out, there was no trouble at all getting out with the current this time. But once I was out a bit on the actual bar, it was a little bit lumpy, but not too bad. And little Cashalow, she just steamed through. I had the main up, but the wind was coming to the southwest, but it wasn't doing much. And then once we got out, I got the headsail up and we started sailing, and it was all okay for a while, but the wind didn't really last long, and it wasn't very strong when I got out there, probably only about 8 knots tops. G'day, here we are. We've just left Lakes Entrance, finally, after weeks, finally got out, and it's a pretty lousy day. There were all showers and everything this morning, and there's very little wind now, but it's enough to keep the sails full, and it's enough for us to keep sailing. So we're just sailing along, and we're doing about 3.5 to 4 knots. About this 4 knots. So as long as we can maintain that, I won't start the engine again. It'll be a slow old trip to Eden, but I'm expecting that. Now the forecast is for just light southwesterlies, unfortunately, about 8 knots or so, but if it can pick up a bit more than that, that'd be great. And then we'll probably get some southeasterlies when we get over to the east coast, and then that should rocket us up to Eden, hopefully not too much on the nose. So we'll find out, but that'll be sort of into tomorrow, I think. As long as we can maintain some breeze during the night and sail along, I'll be happy. We headed off towards Cape Coran, I think it's called, which is about 40 odd miles away. And unfortunately, the further we got on, the less the wind became. And so I started the motor again. After I'd shut down the motor, I had to start it up again. And I started up again. I started the motor sail, but you know, even motor sailing, you don't want to motor at high revs because you just burn too much fuel. And even though I had plenty of fuel, I didn't particularly fancy doing a fuel top up at sea, because it's a little bit awkward on this boat, which I'll show you sometime. So I decided just to motor at low revs and to motor sail, which was making for very, very slow progress. Got to Cape Coran in the middle of the night and watched the light go past, and not just sure exactly what time it was, but then by 8 o'clock the next morning, still with light winds, we were off Point Hicks. Good morning. It's Monday. We left Lakes Entrance yesterday. It's Monday morning, and it's about 8 o'clock. And we're off Point Hicks. That's Point Hicks over there. There's the Point Hicks Lighthouse, and that's the first point that Cook saw, apparently, on Endeavour, and named that after the crewman who actually saw it. Sun's come up. It's been a really frustrating night. Had to motor for about 12 hours after leaving Lakes Entrance yesterday because it was just so calm, very light winds, and if any wind at all, and then it dropped right off. So motored for about 12 hours in total, and then sailed from Cape Coran, I think it is, Cape Coran, and here to Point Hicks. I haven't motored since last night. So after Point Hicks, it was off to Rame, or Ramey Head, R-A-M-E, and I'm sure that was about, I think it was around about 25 miles or so away. But then the wind started to really pick up, and it swung around to the south and southwest, and then southerly, and we were racing off then towards Gabo Island after we after we got around Cape Rame. As the wind increased, though, the seas increased. Turn the corner now, heading to Ramey Point and then Cape Howe, which is up in the ahead in the distance there. And now that we're on this tack, we're doing over 6 knots. Well, we were. Yes, as we surf down the waves, there we are, 6.5. It's fun sailing, and we're going in the right direction. So feeling a bit better. Looks like we'll have a pretty quick run to Eden, but still it'll take us all day to get there. There we are. I know the YouTube videos are all full of boats seeing dolphins, but they're magnificent creatures, you can't ignore them. Here we are. These are different colourings to the ones we see normally in Queensland. Oh, there's 3, 4, there they are. Well, look at them all. Good morning, boys and girls. Look at that, they're everywhere. So much for not getting them on camera. Got a whole pod of dolphins. They're having fun, racing little cachalot. The sail to Gabo Island was started to get really rough. I guess it's because the East Coast current comes down, the East Australian current comes down the East Coast, heading from the north, heading south. And the swells and the winds at this stage were all coming from the south west and due south. So the winds make the waves stack up, and I guarantee we probably had at times 3 metre troughs or 3 metre swells, and it was really blowing. And the forecast had said around about 20 to 25 knots. Well, I guarantee it was gusting to 30 at times. So we had a wild old ride in a little cachalot. It just had 7 knots a couple of times now, but I'll just see if we can catch it. We just had to get in there a second ago. 6, 7. Not bad for a little girl. The little cachalot just performed absolutely brilliantly, and it was a credit to her designer and to her builder. But I was sitting facing backwards and watching those waves, and each one would pick us up, and it was really, really very scary stuff. Finally arrived off Gabo Island, and here's what Gabo Island looked like in the distance on the GoPro. This is Gabo Island, and just beyond Gabo Island is Cape Howe, and Cape Howe is the border between New South Wales and Queensland. We've been making unbelievable time since Cape Hicks this morning at 8 o'clock. It's now about 1:30, and we're here at Gabo Island. It's been an enormous sail, but as you can see, it is very, very rough. The winds are blowing at about gusty, I reckon about 25, and the seas, the swells, even though you wouldn't be able to see it here. Just hang on. Sometimes you get a bit carried away. Little cachalot who wants to round up. And yeah, so yeah, the seas have been enormous, and I'm moving the camera everywhere. And oh yeah, there's the I'm trying to think of the name of that mountain, but impressive mountain in the background. And yeah, and I'm all rugged up, that's why I sound a bit funny. Protect against the sun and the wind. And just to the right of the magnificent lighthouse and the old lighthouse keepers' cottages, which you probably can't see. But to the right of the lighthouse is sand hills in the distance. That is Cape Howe. That's the border with Victoria and New South Wales. And Gabo Island certainly is an infamous island. A lot of boats have come to grief there, and including some yachts, and some people were killed in at least one of those that I know of. So that's where we are. The seas are unbelievable. The weather is, I just hope it's a little calmer as we head down to, or up to Eden. So beyond Gabo Island in the distance, you can see the low flat sandhills of Cape Howe, and Cape Howe is the border between New South Wales and Victoria. And I celebrated that a bit because and filmed that because this is the first time Cachalot has ever gone into New South Wales. Well, Cachalot, old girl, you are now officially in New South Wales. So, that's Cape Howe over there, and those sand dunes, that signifies the edge of Cape Howe. And that's the border between Victoria to your left and New South Wales to your right. And this is Cachalot's first time in New South Wales. As you can see, it's pretty boisterous out here. I've taken the headsail down and just going on the mainsail, a reduced mainsail, because it just kept trying to round up. And we're trying to get the right angle to get to Eden, which will probably be about, it's now 3 o'clock, could be about another 5 hours away. But that's okay, daylight savings should still be daylight, and I don't care if it's pitch black, I just want to get in there. So that's Cape Howe, and yes, so that's the story of Cachalot was built in Tassie, and she's never been out of Victoria and Tasmania, but she has now. She's in New South Wales, and in soon anyway, not sure exactly when, but she'll be in Queensland. It'll be her first time in Queensland as well. From then on, the winds had just been howling, and we'd been flying. I actually recorded 8 knots, a little Cachalot sailing down big waves, and recorded about 8 knots, but we were consistently doing 7 knots, 7.5 knots. So she performed absolutely magnificently. We got to Cape Hicks at about 8 o'clock on Monday morning, but it was 8 o'clock Monday night before we got to Twofold Bay, which is Eden. And so we passed a few capes on the way to Eden, and just tracked past those fine. This pretty lighthouse is Green Cape, and we're about 10 miles from Eden, nearly there, thank goodness. But the problem was, by this time I had had absolutely no sleep since the night before last, and I was getting really sleep deprived again. But I was really worried because as darkness came on, I was getting very, very tired, and I was really worried that I'd start to make mistakes, which is very easy to do when you're sleep deprived. And I was trying the 20-minute cap naps, which I have before, have worked for me before, but it didn't seem to work at all on this trip. So I got up in the morning, and it was grey and still raining and overcast. And when I first got up, I opened the hatch to have a look out to make sure we were still in the same place. And I looked over and I could hear these voices, and it was the Navy. But because when I looked left, there was HMAS Arunta, as it turned out. But I didn't know that at the time. So there was, when I woke up, there was HMAS Arunta off to the left. And the noises I heard were coming from the sailors on a rib. I knew what was going on. As soon as I saw Arunta there, I recognised the flag she was flying, which was the ammunitioning flag, because that's where the ammunitioning depot is. But it meant that we would probably have to move, and I knew that the Navy required you to be at least 500 metres away from the jetties. So initially the sailors moved about 4 yachts, asked 4 yachts to move on, and they did so, and a couple came over to where I was because they said, "You're lucky you're outside the 500 metres." So I thought, that's it, it's great, you know, we're fine, we're going to be able to stay. But I was a bit premature because about an hour later the boat came back, and this time he was telling everyone to move because the contractor had come along, and I guess it's the ammunition contractor, and said that the whole bay had to be cleared. And I knew this had happened to people before, but I just hoped it wasn't going to happen to me, but it did, unfortunately. So we up anchored and we took off, and you know, my little manual anchor winch is hard work, and I was still very, very tired even this morning. So it was a bit of an effort, but we motored over no problem. And we're now in Boyd Bay, which is the next bay around. So it was only about an hour away. And we got to Boyd Bay at about 11, I think, something like that. And so I spent the day here, anchored, and it's now lovely and sunny. The wind is still blowing, but it's expected to ease. And as I probably mentioned at the beginning, I've just had a lovely wash and shave, and I feel $1 million. So I'm just about to relax a bit and maybe have a cup of tea, maybe even a little sleep. And I think I'm going to head off to Bermagui tomorrow because the forecast looks okay for it. So so that's about it. And I'm feeling a lot better, and it's been an interesting time here in Twofold Bay. Good morning. We're just on our way out of East Boyd Bay. It's at 7:30 on Thursday morning, and we're just heading out to the entrance to Twofold Bay, or the exit. Over directly in front of us is the township of Eden.